Let's begin. We are on Daf Chaf Vav Amud Aleph, following in the art school. It's 26a2, and we just finished quoting this idea that we thought actually knocked out the opinion of Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmani, right? And we're actually re-explaining what Rabbi Yehuda said. So let's go back a couple lines for the last thing that we saw. The Gemara says as follows: Amar Rabbi Yehuda, ani lo shamati ela makom mikdash bilvad. That the only place that you cannot have tzarat, because it's not a place of inheritance. It's not a place of inheritance for the Jewish people because it belongs to the whole of the Jewish people, as an example, is the Bet HaMikdash. The Gemara's answer is, it sounds like he's saying that the synagogues and the Batei Midrash do become tameh. And we just said earlier that if it belongs to the people, then it's not considered like it's part of the of Nachala, in which case it can't get the tum'ah of tzarat. The Gemara says, no, don't read effectively Rabbi Yehuda to say makom mikdash, the Bet HaMikdash, i.e. excluding the Batei Knesset. Rather read it makom mikudash, the holy places, and that does include the shuls, and that does include those other things. Says the Gemara, what are we arguing about in this scenario? Tanakama Savar, the Tanakama that says that all of the buildings in Yerushalayim do not have tumah, lo netchalka Yerushalayim mishvatim. That Yerushalayim was not given, like, so basically, as an example like this. Normally we understand that Eretz Yisrael was divided amongst all the tribes. What was Jerusalem? Now Jerusalem is the capital city. So did Jerusalem just belong to the people of that area? So it belonged individually to that tribe? Or was Jerusalem like a city that belonged to everybody? Because that was the holy city. So the Tanakama holds, Lo netchalka Yerushalayim mishvatim. It was not divided. Since it was not divided, it belonged to the people of that tribe's area. So since it belongs to them, so therefore the Tanakama holds, it can get tumah. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, netchalka Yerushalayim mishvatim. Yerushalayim was distributed to the Shvatim, and therefore, since it was distributed to the Shvatim, so therefore all of those areas are also able to have tum'ah, because they were given to the Shvatim, and therefore the only things that are excluded from that were the areas that were holy, i.e. the Batei Knesset, Batei Midrash, etc., etc. So is that clear so far? According to the Tanakama, right, all of Jerusalem, including the regular buildings, was divided to the Shvatim, and therefore people owned it, and therefore it could get tum'ah. According to the Rabbi Yehuda, it was not divided to the Shvatim, and therefore it could not become tameh. It could become tameh because it was a nachala to the Shvatim, and therefore the only problem was in the Bet Knesset itself, which is excluded from having the din of tumah of tzarat. Now the Gemara says as follows. So now that we know that that's the machloket, so if it's lo netchalka Yerushalayim mishvatim, it was not divided to them, then the halacha is it's not a house of inheritance because it was not divided to the Shvatim. So therefore, all of Jerusalem's out. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it was divided, and since it was divided, it could get tumah, except for a Bet Knesset or a Bet Midrash, like we already explained, that belongs to everybody. Okay, now the Gemara says, if that's the case, if that's the case, that is the machloket, it's a machloket. This machloket between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda is a pre-existing machloket that we see in other places as well. The Tanya, because we learned in the Braita, what was the portion of Yehuda? Har Habayit, the mountain of Har Habayit, Halishkot, the chambers, which means the areas, the rooms surrounding Bet HaMikdash, like the most famous of which was the Lishkat HaGazit, which means the area of hewn stone. We found that in Masechet Ta'anit, where we talked about how the Sanhedrin would gather in the room of the Lishkat HaGazit, okay? So Lishkat, that just means a room. So those rooms were designated for the communal purposes of the Bet HaMikdash. So Har HaBayit, the Lishkot, Azarot, the Ezrat Nashim, the various courtyards around the temple, those all were part of Yehuda. Maya b'chelko shel Binyamin. So what was the portion of Binyamin? Ulam, the actual chamber of the Bet HaMikdash. Hechal, the sanctuary, the front part of it. Ubet Kodesh Kodashim, and also the Bet Kodesh HaKodashim, the place where they had the Aron. Yehuda's border was not a regular line, but there was like a finger, a strip that came out of the portion of Yehuda, and it entered into the part of Binyamin.
Like a passageway?
Like almost like a passageway. Okay, so there's this one little strip of land, very narrow, of Yehuda that enters into the portion of Binyamin. Uba, and what is on that portion? Uba mizbeach banui, and on that portion of Yehuda, the mizbeach is built. And Binyamin was anxious, was nervous, was upset about this portion, this little thin strip of Yehuda land that entered into his land, because he felt that he was missing out on owning that space for his tribe, for the Kedusha. He was upset about it all the time. Shneimar, like the pasuk says, chofef alav kol yom, which means he hovers over it all day long, because he was bothered by it, and he wanted to swallow it back up into his own property. The fikach, because he was so nervous about it, not for the monetary value, but because it was he was pining over the fact that this one piece was not his. The fikach zacha Binyamin v'naaseh ushpischan la shechina. So since that bothered him so much, Binyamin was zocheh to become the host, the person that hosted the Shekhinah in his portion. Now there seems to be a machloket exactly what this little strip of land was of Yehuda. Did a strip of land come into? So just so we're clear, how does the Bet HaMikdash work? You have a courtyard, then inside you have steps up, and then you have the Bet HaMikdash, right? The steps of the Bet HaMikdash, the Kodesh, and then finally you have the Kodesh HaKodeshim. So it's long rectangle. Where is the Mizbeach that we're talking about? This Mizbeach that we're mentioning. That Mizbeach is in the courtyard of the temple. So into the courtyard of the temple comes this little strip of Yehuda land, and the simple interpretation of the Gemara is that the Mizbeach itself was on the land of Yehuda. That's the simple translation of the pasuk. Now, I want you to look at Rashi for 1 second. Yeah, you see, it's the third wide line. Umaya b'chelko shel Binyamin ulam ve'echal. Mitzad ma'arav, from the west side. Achshav yoter bentayim makom ha'mizbeach lamed bet ama. Uben ha'olam ha'mizbeach. There's 32 feet between the mizbeach and the outer wall. Uben ha'olam ha'mizbeach, and between the ulam ha'mizbeach is chaf bet ama, is 22 ama. Shelo piresh shel mihu. It doesn't say who that belongs to. Chazaru piresh ritzuah yotzea. Now it comes back and tells you that there's this line of Yehuda territory that goes in. Limedcha kan ritzuah zu levada liYehuda. That strip alone belonged to Yehuda. Aval tzfono shel mizbeach, the north of the mizbeach, udromo maravo, and the south and the west, shel Binyamin. ובמסכת זבחים אמרינן שאין ליהודה באותה רצועה, אלא המזרחית מקום היסוד. וכך לא היה יסוד למזרחו של המזבח. So now, according to this opinion, the way we're understanding what Rashi says is that this strip comes out and enters into the courtyard, and it encompasses the mizbeach. And then Rashi says, but there's an opinion that says, no, actually, it didn't have the mizbeach on it. It was just right next to the mizbeach, alongside the eastern part of the Mizbeach. So take a look at the drawing that you have right over here, okay?
23?
23, yeah. Now, I'm not using the actual diagram because I don't want to get that involved in this. But my point is, I just want to show you the north, south, east, west. You see that? So if you imagine everything to the left belongs to Binyamin, okay? Everything to the top belongs to Binyamin. Bottom belongs to Binyamin. Where does Yehuda's portion come in? Yehuda's portion comes in alongside the easternmost part of the Mizbeach. According to many opinions, that piece of Yehuda land stretches out only along the eastern wall of the Mizbeach. Okay? Now, if you look at the image over here, you'll see it as well. So it's only along the easternmost. So if you're walking around the Mizbeach, on the north side, on the west side, and even according to some on the south side, that also belonged to Benjamin. There's this one part that belongs to Yehuda. And Benjamin was always upset that how come this little strip of Yehuda has to come in over here and steal, the opportunity for Kedusha from my tribe. And because it bothered him so much, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the ability to host the presence of Hashem in the temple in his portion. Okay, says the Gemara. Okay, so according to this, what are we learning? What are we seeing between this? What do we see from this Braita? Wherever Yehuda is, wherever Binyamin is, you see that Jerusalem was actually divided amongst the tribes. So if we see that according to this Braita, that there was a division amongst the tribes, who is that going like in the machloket that we said before? It's according to the opinion of Nitchalka, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that Nitchalka Yerushalayim Shvatim. So that opinion, this Braita would be following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. V'haitana savar, but this Braita holds Lo Nitchalka Yerushalayim Shvatim. The Tanya. Now we're going to have another opinion that says, according to the Tana Kama, the Tanya en maskinim batim Yerushalayim. You can't rent out homes in Yerushalayim. Why? It doesn't belong to you. Those houses in Jerusalem were there so that when people came up to go to the temple, they would be available for the people. So therefore you see that even the houses themselves belong to Am Yisrael as a whole. And that's why the Tana Kama held that no building in Jerusalem could ever get Tzarat because it was not a Nachala, it was not a Yerusha. Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok says, Af lo mitot, not only do they not have the ability to rent out the houses, also even the beds themselves, they could not rent out. So what were you allowed to rent for? You were allowed to rent for the hassle of the bed itself. Some sort of compensatory fee for that, but nothing with regards to the ground itself. Okay? Lefikach, therefore, since that's the case, the Rabbi Eliezer adds, not only can't you charge for the home, you also can't charge for the bed anything more than what is related to the bed itself, and not the ground. Lefikach, orot kodashim, ba'ale ushpizin, notlin otam bizroa. So now, let's say you have the people that are coming, and they have the skins of their animals. Okay, the halacha would be that they would be allowed to take them. Okay, they would be allowed to take them bizra, which means forcibly. Let's look at Rashi. Orot kodashim, toda, shilamim. So certain korbanot that you're allowed to keep the skin. On an olah, obviously, everything is burned, right? So when it comes to toda, when it comes to shilamim, that normally the skin would go to the owner. Over here, the innkeeper, the person who was maintaining the house, they were allowed to keep them. Why were they allowed to take them instead of the people? Because since they were obligated to host everybody in their house, this was the, so to speak, the compensation that the orot would go to the people of the innkeepers. That would be at least something that they would be able to take. Now, what you see clearly is whether you're allowed to charge for the house and not the bed. Sorry, the bed but not the house. Or if you're not even allowed to charge anything extra for the bed, everybody held that at least the ground itself was not belonging to them. So these two opinions, these two Tanaim, clearly hold, according to the opinion of Tana Kama, that Yerushalayim was not divided to the Shevatim, but belonged to everybody. The Gemara says, Amar Abaye, what do we see from here? Shmamina, what do we learn? Orach ara lemishbak inesh gulfa umashcha beushpiza. That when a person comes to visit someone's house, they should leave behind some form of a gift. either the example he's giving is that he has a gulfa, which is the container that he's drinking from. Rashi says kan shel cheres, so an earthenware vessel. So you're leaving him something, even though it's not like you bought him something. It's interesting. Abaye does not say if you're a guest you have to buy a gift. He specifically says, look, kan shel cheres shenishtamesh bo, that he's using it. Or umashcha beushpiza, Rashi says, im shachat be'ema, you slaughtered an animal. What do you leave the guy? You leave the guy the hide of the animal. You need to eat it because that's why you slaughtered it, right? But the hide of the animal, which is a side benefit, you leave to the host as a show of gratitude. And that Abaye was saying orach ara, that was the way of the world, that was derech eretz. Gemara says, okay, Amar Rava. Rava says, Lo shanu. Now we went back to what the Mishnah said. The Mishnah said earlier that when you sell an object of Kedusha, you could only use that money for something which is holier. Not only the money itself, like we saw in the Mishnah, but afilu motarehen. Even if there was extra money. So I sold the synagogue for $1 million. And then what did I buy with it? I bought with it Aron Kodesh, beautiful Aron Kodesh for $100,000. I've got $900,000 left. I still can't use that $900,000 for something that's not kadosh. It has to be something which is a higher value. Amar Rava. Rava says, Lo shanu. We did not learn this. Ela shelo machru shiv'at tovei ha'ir b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir. Where the people in charge, the committee yani of the synagogue, of the community, they did not sell it in front of b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir, at a meeting where every one of the people was present there when they made the synagogue. Okay. However, okay. Aval machru shiv'at tovei ha'ir b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir. What if they sold it and they were in the presence of the people themselves? Then the halacha is afilu lemishtabe shichra. Even if they want to donate it to the beverage fund, Harry, right? They want to have beer. They want to grab some tequila. Shapir dameh. Now let's look for 1 second at Rashi. Rashi says as follows: Lo shanu de'en moridin damim mikdushatam ubet knes b'chashivuto omed af biyad lokach dumya desfarim lokach b'em sefer Torah ve'ala manhig sfarim behaviatan ela shelo machru. When is that case? Hatovim, where the committee did not sell it, bireshut ha'am, with their permission. Avale machru, but if they sold it with the permission of the people, pake'a kedusha men hachefetz, the kedusha of the bet knesset that was on the money leaves the object, umin adamim, from the money and from the object, mutar la'asot mehem kol ritzonam. They're able to do whatever they want with it. V'hainu deba minei Ravina meravashi. That's why Ravina asked from Ravashi, al tila debe knishta ma'u lemizre. When you have the bet knesset that was plowed over, ma'u lemizre alma b'mecher kodu abayit ve'amov kedushatay ukaimi. When are you allowed to be able to do something with that space? Why was he asking him that question? Because there is a possibility of having a bet knesset's money actually not be required to use for something holier. And when is that? When the people themselves are present, when the Shiv'at Tovei Ha'ir sell the object. Now let's try and understand and let's try and be clear on what this means. Effectively, it sounds like from the answer of the Gemara, that the Gemara is saying here that when does this Kedusha remain on the funds? That's only when we don't know if we have the right, the full appreciation and approval of the people for the sale. Since I don't know, and maybe I can't know, what everyone would say about this sale, so therefore I have to assume that the stakeholder would only allow me to go hire a Kedusha. And without the knowledge to be able to make that decision by myself, I'm bound by this Ma'alim B'Kodesh V'Lo Moridin. However, if they agree that we're closing this Beit Knesset and we're selling the Beit Knesset, so now we close the Beit Knesset. The money doesn't transfer. Kedusha doesn't jump to the money. Let me share why I think this is very important. The Gemara says that there are two things from the pasuk. Two things that the Kedusha jumps from the object to the money. Etnan zona Umechir kelev. Let's say I want to bring a korban. Okay? You have a zona, unfortunately. It happens in the world. There's a zona. A person gave money to a zona for zinut. For this act. He paid her price. Now she takes this money. She wants to use the money she was paid for prostitution. She wants to use it to buy a korban. That money is tarif. Etnan zona. That which was given for a zona. What else? What happens if I sell my dog? And for the price of the dog that I sold you the Rottweiler, now I'm taking this dog money and I want to bring a korban. The halakha is, you can't use that money to buy a korban. So you see that the previous thing, now this is interesting, why? Because normally we understand that money is fungible. I have $100 in my pocket. I sold this money, I have $200 in my pocket. Does it make a difference which bill?
Theoretically, no.
Theoretically, no. So our relationship with money usually is that there is a fungibility of money. And that what was sold is not present in this money. Maybe I have in my net value the fact that some of my net worth comes from this. But why would that thing, whether it's uncouth, disgusting, or beautiful and holy, why would that transfer to the money itself?
Maybe they mean that specific money.
That
specific money.
That is what it
Not
means.
fungibility.
That is what it means.
Okay.
What I'm saying is that normally our relationship with money is fungible. And it wouldn't transfer either the holiness or the unholiness to the money. That was unholy. Now I have money in my pocket. What difference does it make between this $100 bill and that $100 bill? I should not be a zona. I should not. But now that I have money in my account, how could you, right? Is the money asur? That money, that bill? Right? So normally we would say that. However, the pasuk comes to tell us that in these two cases, etnan zona mechir kelev, that's how it works. But outside of that, let me give you an example. Let's say I stole $1 million. Now I have $1 million in my bank account. That is stolen money. Now, forget maaser on that money. Wait, forget maaser on that money for a minute. Okay? Forget maaser. I can neither confirm nor deny that was said in the class. Right? Yet now, what's it called? In the scenario where someone stole money, now they have $2 million. Now the guy wants to do teshuvah. He wants to, bring korban. He can't bring any korban. He can't give any tzedakah. He's forbidden from giving. Of course, I have an obligation to return the money. But regardless, let's say I can't return the money. The person's not alive. Well, what am I supposed to, that all my money now, everything I am tarif? You see, the deed is the problem. I need to do teshuvah on the deed. If I can make right, I need to make right on returning the money. But let's say that's not on the table. I've done my teshuvah. There's money here that's tarif. I'm allowed to spend money up until I get to $1 million left, and then I can't. Like, you understand? It's a very elusive thing. So when it comes to this, etnan zona mechir kelev, we have a specific pasuk telling us that that's the case. But outside of that, do we say this idea that money becomes taref because it was used? This money. Of course, the money is taref. But is it this money that's taref? We wouldn't normally say that.
No.
So, no.
If someone steals money and they give charity with it, it's kosher.
No, one second. Let me be clear. The money that you gave to charity that you stole is mitzvah ba'avera. But it's not that this money is, like, in other words, when someone steals money and then gives money to charity, did he give the bill that he stole?
What's the value?
It's the money that he now has accessible. But etnan zona mechir kelev is that.
They tainted all the money?
It can't be, right?
Right.
So that's my point. So when it comes to this, etnan zona, it's these coins cannot be used to purchase. This money.
An issue with that, though.
And it's only over here. So therefore, when it comes to Beit Knesset, which is the reverse of this, where it's that unholiness, inexplicably transferring to the money of, it's holiness transferring to the money of. So what we're saying is, that's only an element when the sale happened without the express consent of the people that they're meant to be representing.
How does a dog fall into that category?
Because it's a low.
Can I ask?
Like I took a dog and now it's like I'm sacrificing a dog on the mizbeach.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
Number one, when you say the townspeople approved of the sale, what percentage?
Let's say everybody. Let's make it simple. Everybody.
But it sort of doesn't work. They're appointing, and I don't see the correlation between the dog and the zonah and 7 trustees, frankly. These townspeople
No.
are appointing the 7 people.
You know why you don't see it? Because I'm not saying it. I'm saying the opposite of that.
No, you're saying that you can't use the money for anything but anything that is other than holy.
I'm specifically not saying that.
If the 7 trustees sell the property,
Yeah.
you have to buy something better.
Yes. Not because the money's holy.
Why?
That's what I'm trying to prove.
Oh.
That only Etnan Zonah and Mechir Kelev, we have this idea. Where this transfers onto the physical money. Over here, what you would have thought was that this money is holy, but why would the money be holy? They sold a bit. Maybe they have this like cloud hanging over them that they need to buy another shul. But it's with that dollars, with those exact monies, right? So the point would be
Using that to prove that it's not the case.
that it's not the case. Yeah. Okay. Only here do we find a transfer of the unholiness onto the physical money. Over here, what we're learning from Rava, when he's telling us, Lo Shanu, that it's only in the case where the people are not there, is that it's not a transfer of holiness to money. It's rather that without their consent, I'm locked in to the original. I'll give you a perfect example of this idea. Let's say someone comes to me and they give me money for tzedakah, okay? And I'm collecting money for tzedakah for Israel, and I put on the website and I tell everyone I'm collecting money for tzedakah to give to people who are suffering from the war in the south and the north. Let's say I decide, you know what, I don't want to do that. I want to just give money to a yeshiva somewhere. Am I allowed to do that? No. I have a mandate to do what the person wanted me to do with his money. See? That's what we're experiencing here. They gave me, as a community leader, the right, this money, to buy a shul. We bought the shul. Now we decided to sell the shul. I can't deviate from what it was because I don't have the right of the town people. I can't make that decision. That's what the Gemara is saying. However, if you're rising in Kedusha, halakha is you are allowed. Why? Because it's better than what they had. It's dialing up. And that actually is also the halakha in tzedakah, by the way. Let's say, as an example, someone gives me money for this tzedakah. But there's a tzedakah that's a more worthwhile tzedakah.
Even if it deviates from the original?
Even if it deviates from the original. Unless I know that that's not what the person wants. So in other words, let's say someone just randomly gives you money. And I know that you gave me money for this. Yeah. You gave money for this, but now there's a mitzvah of pidyon shvuyim.
What is it?
Saving people, hostages from jail or from whatever. It's a very rare mitzvah. It's the highest form of tzedakah. Pidyon shvuyim is the highest form of tzedakah.
More than burying somebody?
Yes.
More than Talmud Torah?
More than Talmud Torah, yeah. Wow. Talmud Torah has its own zechut outside of the world of tzedakah. But when it comes to the tzedakah element of tzedakah, pidyon shvuyim is the highest form. Okay? So if you gave me for a lower tzedakah, now I have this opportunity. I can't reach you. The guy's telling me, give it to me now, or I'm gone. I'm allowed to make that decision on your behalf.
Because you know he would want a higher mitzvah.
I could assume that if you gave me money for tzedakah, a better form of tzedakah is better for you. However, what if the guy specifically gave me the money, and even if I don't know, but I have reason to believe?
Like for the beverage fund, you mean?
Let's go away from the beverage fund, because then beverage fund has its own things. One might. We'll come back to beverage fund, okay? In a minute, I promise, because it's actually relevant. No, it's a very relevant comment. Very relevant comment, okay? Let's say, as an example, I know a guy not religious at all, super Zionist, never gave a dime to the shul. Now all of a sudden he gives $10,000 as an example. This has not happened. I'm just saying as an example. $10,000 didn't happen. $10,000, he's right to the Israel Emergency Fund. Yeah. Now I have a better mitzvah of tzedakah, higher form of tzedakah, because it's a mitzvah and I'm buying tefillin, and the guy this guy, if I told him that his money was going for that, he'd flip out.
Can't do it.
Can't do it. Why?
You know specifically that he does.
Exactly. Even if he doesn't say. Even if he doesn't say. Do you understand that? Yeah. Even if he doesn't say.
What if it's for a soldier?
Sorry?
What if the tefillin are for soldiers?
Wouldn't make a difference.
What? That's part of the Israel fund.
Because you know specifically
if I know this guy atheist, hates religion. If he found that I was buying tefillin for the soldiers, he would be very upset with his money. I can't do that with his
He has
money.
an expectation as to how you're going to use that money.
Now, it's an unspoken expectation, my point
he
is.
didn't tell you.
When it's spoken, fine. When I know that a guy is very anti, doesn't want anything to do with religion, I would have to assume that the guy is, generally in his same line, and that's not what he would want. It's not my place to do that, okay? That's the nikudah here.
I need one more question.
Yeah.
Is there any relevance to the 7 trustees?
What do you
Any
mean?
halacha on 7? Why 7? Why did it say 7?
Look, I think it's not specific. That's what they used to do, but it's not specifically a scenario of 7. That's, if I'm not mistaken, Rashi points that out. Hold on 1 second.
Maybe a majority of the Shvatim.
At the end of the day, the result is if the town approves of it, they could do whatever they want with the money. But if the town or all 7 weren't there, then they could only ma'alim b'kodesh the money.
Sorry? I didn't hear what you said.
And if the town approves of the sale and all 7 are there, then they're allowed to do whatever they want with the money. But if not all 7 are there, or if not the whole town approves, they could only ma'alim b'kodesh the money.
Exactly, yes. Yes, okay? And I'm proving from that it's not something which is limited specifically to the transferring of holiness or unholiness to the money itself. Now, I just want to come back, like I said, I was going to come back to the beverage fund. The beverage fund is an interesting thing. And let me explain why. The beverage fund would be a tax-deductible donation to the synagogue. Is it maaser deductible?
No.
I'm not sure.
Really?
And I think that would depend on the person's intention. Let's say I have a guy who loves drinking tequila. Now he's making sure that they have tequila at the kiddush, so he could drink tequila.
You're getting a service back.
How could that be maaser?
But you don't know what they're buying.
No, it doesn't matter. Let's say the guy likes alcohol. He wants a drink. So now, for the Ois Bay, he's like, Rep Beverage Fund.
By the way, 80% of the time it's for that.
One second, is the breakfast money?
Sorry?
I give money to sponsor a breakfast.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
What, in maaser?
Yeah.
Not really. Let me explain why. What's the benefit that you got from the breakfast? It might be $1. You got a bagel, $2. You didn't get $180 from out of benefit out of that. By the way, that would be the law also for tax deductible purposes.
The service is rendered.
Exactly.
But I'm taking one drink.
Yeah.
It's $5, $10.
Yeah.
It's a $100 bottle.
Even still, there's a feeling, like as an example, when you bring a bottle to the table and you're like, guys, here you go. That's worth money to people. To buy the big bottle at the bar, at the club, even at the Beit Knesset, lahavdil elef alfei havdalot. You're the guy who brought that bottle. People pay money to be the guy who brought the bottle, who poured everyone. They feel great about it. Like, this round's on me. The guy who shouts, no one says this round's on me anonymously. Right? Never anyone ever said that. This round has been sponsored anonymously.
What about the coffee?
So 1 second, I just want to.
Oh, bro.
Hold on. I want to tackle this. I want to tackle this. So when a person is giving money to the beverage fund, as an example, and their intention is, to feel good with the boys and da-da-da-da, but actually their intention is not, this is what makes the breakfast situation. People don't realize, we take for granted that you have guys getting up early on Shabbat morning, coming to shul, sitting through breakfast, a 20-minute, 25-minute, sometimes 15-minute, depending on, the situation that we're in at that time of the year. But there's a big class there. People are sitting there listening to words of Torah. Why are they listening? Why are they staying in shul? Because you create an environment, a breakfast, a situation, a vibe for Torah. That costs money. And if the intention is to be able to create this situation where the boys are here and we're learning together or we're praying together, if that's the intention, that money is holy. It's 100% maaser. There's no difference between building a comfortable shul that has really comfortable chairs, right? There's no difference between that.
Redacted.
There's no difference. I knew that would go down well, especially with Stanley. Right? There's no difference between that and the beverage fund. No difference with that and cold brew. Why do you have cold brew? Because guys like cold brew. What does that mean? The guy's going to go downstairs and he'll listen to a Torah class. So whether you sponsor the Torah class or you sponsor the thing that gave you the Torah class, In fact, the Chachamim tell us that when the angel hit Yaakov, he hit him in the thigh. And what does the Farshim say? That was the support of Torah. That's what the angel of Esav was able to hit, is he was able to injure or to separate or to create daylight between the Yisachar and Zevulun. Between the Torah scholars and the people supporting Torah scholars should be a relationship that's, unbreakable. When you're giving money to Torah, this should be your blood brother, that person that you're supporting. That's how it should be. But what he did was he created an us and them between Torah and its support. But really, that should be the feeling, that should be the connection. There should be no difference between understanding that, this person is studying and I want to support him because of my love for the Torah. That's where it's coming from. You should feel as much energy and love and excitement in supporting the Torah as he feels in learning the Torah. Because this is my relationship with the Torah. Very powerful things, okay? Let's carry on.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
So, I didn't bring up
I'll give you 1.5.
The beverage I didn't bring up because if I tell you, if I make a donation specifically for something, do you have the ability to put it to something more holy? I just want to get that clear in my mind.
If you're not giving it specifically, and I know, and you don't mind, if I told you as an example that I was giving it to something holier, and you would be like, oh, fantastic, okay, then I'm allowed to do it without asking you. Because we say, like there's a law that says, Mizakin la'adam shelo b'fanav. You're allowed to give a zechut to someone even if he's not there. That's the basis of, if I see your tefillin here in the afternoon, I'm allowed to use your tefillin without asking. You know that?
You could reasonably
Why?
Want the...
Because it's a zechut for you, and there's no loss. But I'm not allowed to use your tefillin during praying times, because that's your time to use it. But nichale, says the Gemara, nichale de adam, it is good for a person that le'avid mitzvah beheftzeh, that a mitzvah should be done with his object. Could you imagine? You have tefillin, you only put it on once a day. Now all of a sudden someone else used it. Best usage of your tefillin would be to give it to some Chabad boys. Let them bring it. Yeah, by the way, I just thought of a sick song. They should do Chabad boys, bad boys. They should make that song for Chabad boys. Okay, fine. Let's move on. It says the Gemara.
They would definitely do it, by the way.
They would definitely do it.
They
That is a sick.
Kippahs in St. Bart's for the Chabad, and it says, "Work hard, pray harder."
What you gonna do when they come for you? And you can just see the video. Forcing the guy. 2 Chabad guys holding a guy down, tying the tefillin. Okay, fine. Let's move on. If I was not a rabbi. Okay. Says the Gemara. Ravina havale hahu tila de beknishta. This is what we just mentioned. Ravina had a tila, which means a little small mountain, a mound, the Bnei Krishna, that the Bet Knesset used to be on. He went to Ravashi and he said, Mauli Mizreh, am I allowed to plant on this land where the synagogue used to be? Or does that space, does it remain eternally healthy? Right? If they built another one, does the Kedusha of this place go to the other place? Because there was never any kavanah to continue building a Beit Knesset here. Or do we say that actually the Kedusha stays? So do I have the approval? Do I have the lo shanu that we just said earlier in the Gemara? Amale zil zavne mishiva tovei ha'ir b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir. He gave him exactly this answer. He said, go buy the piece of land from the Shivat Tovei Ha'ir and make sure that you do it b'ma'amad anshe ha'ir, in front of the people of the town. Because if you do that, then there's for sure no question that the Kedusha leaves, and that you're able to then go plant on it and no problem. Yes.
It said Ravina had a certain heap of rubble in one of his fields.
Yes.
So he owned the field.
Yes, it was in his field, but it was a place of a synagogue. So in other words, I bought the field, but in the field, the middle of the field, there's the ruins of a synagogue. So the question is, when I bought the field, did that also become mine? I just bought it in the areas surrounding the Beit Knesset. So what he said over here is, if there's Kedusha and you buy just the heap itself, then the halacha is that it would transfer not just the ownership, but also the Kedusha. Okay? Rami bar Ava haveka bani bnei Krishta. Rami bar Abba was one time building Beit Knesset. Have ahi Krishta atika. He had an old synagogue, okay? And he wanted to build the new one. By the way, there's a synagogue here in the city called Altnoi. that's not a synagogue name that comes from here. That synagogue is actually present in a lot of different communities. What does Altnoi mean? Altnoi means alt, old, noi, new. So in Prague, as an example, in Krakow, there's the Altnoi synagogue. Why? Because there was an old synagogue, and then they built a new synagogue. But then they built another new synagogue. So there was the old synagogue and the new synagogue. And then what did the new one become? What did the middle one become? The middle one became the Altno synagogue, the old new one. You understand? So that was the case over here. There was an old one, and then he was building a new one. So he wanted to go and knock down the old one. And he wanted to take all of the material from the synagogue that he was demolishing and to use them for the new synagogue. But before he did that, he wanted to understand if that was mutar. So he came to this question of Rav Chizda. Because Rav Chizda taught, Lo listar b'nei knishta, you can't destroy Bet Knesset, ad bane b'nei knishta until you build a new one. So if you can't destroy it until you build a new one, so I can't use the bricks and the beams from that one. Because it's only once, you build a new one. The Gemara answers, Hatam over there, right? Mishum pshiuta is because we're worried that what are you going to do? You're going to knock down the old one. Then you're going to find out that you don't have the permits for the new one. And then 6 years are going to go by and you're going to drop the whole idea. And then you destroyed one synagogue and you didn't turn that synagogue into a new synagogue. And then there won't be a shul for the people. Gemara says, Ki hai gav namai. But what would be in this case? Is the reason of Rav Chizda that you can't do it until you have a new one because we're worried about the outcome. But here, that I was literally transferring it from one to the next, so there isn't to worry about that, or not. Ki hai gav namai. What would be the case over here? Anyways, he's unsure how to understand the pshat of Rav Chizda, if Rav Chizda's case is relevant here or not. Gemara says, Papa. He came to Rav Papa. Rav Papa said, he said he wasn't allowed to do it. He went in front of Rav Huna and he said, you're not allowed. So neither one of them allowed them to destroy the old synagogue. She'elah is, why did he go to the second rabbi if they went to the first rabbi? Answer is, people do that. Okay, fine. Gemara says,
Did he give him the answer he wanted?
Exactly.
Can you sell a synagogue, then do a sale leaseback while you're trying to build a new synagogue?
Sorry?
Let's say I want to sell a synagogue in order to build a new synagogue.
Yeah.
Can I sell it, do a sale leaseback, and then start the construction on a new synagogue?
So if I do it in front of the Sheva Tovei Ha'ir, do it in front of the people, I could just sell it and do nothing. I could go drink beer. You see what I'm saying? If I don't do that, then the selling itself would be required to jump up to another thing. If I'm doing something which might result in that not coming to fruition, then that's not upgrading to a higher kedusha. All right. The Gemara continues. So he's got two opinions, and they both told him that he can't build the Beit Knesset. Now, ostensibly, what is this Gemara actually teaching us? What do you think?
You need consensus?
No, what I'm asking is, he looked at Rav Chizda and he said, Rav Chizda says, you can't destroy the old synagogue until you build a new one. But what about over here where I'm going to go straight to build a new synagogue? And he asked them and they both said, you can't. What are we learning from that?
Maybe be sure that you can complete the job on the new one?
We're left with a little bit of ambiguity here. That's what I'm trying to bring out. Because we don't know. Why did they tell him it was Asur?
I think they're worried that they're going to end up with nothing.
So Rami Barabba is like, I'm literally taking it from here to here.
I don't think they want to have that space between demolition and new. They want to always have a place to pray.
Continuity.
So what I want to point out over here is that Morris is giving one answer. I don't know if he's right, but I don't know what the real answer is either. Let me explain. Rav Chizda said you can't do this. Rami Barabba is wondering, okay, that's if I'm not directly taking it to another shul. What about if I take it directly and I build another one? And what do they answer? No. What do they mean? Do they mean we're worried about the time in between? Do they mean that we don't trust you? We know too many building projects that didn't actually happen. Right. Can I give you a difference? A difference? Let me give you an example. What happens if you live in Deal, New Jersey, and I want to demolish a synagogue and build a new synagogue. It sounds like from the Gemara over here, I'm not allowed to do it. Because even if I'm taking the bricks and going straight to that one, I still can't do it. If the logic is we don't want you without a Beit Knesset, there's 7 other Beit Knessets, then I would be allowed to do it.
But maybe there wasn't in this town.
That's my point.
They would have said that.
That's exactly my point. So in other words, if there wasn't another one in this town, what would the halakha that we would learn from this be?
You need at least a synagogue.
That if there's another synagogue, they never said this. So why they said no is as important as the answer itself.
Right.
Because the circumstances might give you a situation where if there was another synagogue, we could. What if the answer is, you know what, actually it has nothing to do with if there's other synagogues. We don't want this transferring because we don't believe you. That's got nothing to do with how many synagogues there are.
Sounds like they don't want to end up with a net negative result, which is like you lost the synagogue and you didn't replace it at the end.
What I'm saying is that if that's the case, it wouldn't matter how many synagogues there are.
Yeah, right. I agree.
Even if you're surrounded by synagogues, what do you mean? This may not get to where we want it to get to.
If you demolish this one,
yeah,
you're -1. No matter how many you have outside of that.
Yeah.
Right? And if they're worried that you're not going to complete the building, right, then you may end up with one less synagogue that you didn't replace.
Correct.
So what I'm saying, maybe the concern is that you have to end up in a net positive place. Like you have to still have the same amount of synagogues.
So isn't it going back to the Mishnah?
Sorry?
Don't you go back to the Mishnah? You got to trade up. You can't go backwards.
We're rolling off of that. In other words, that's when, like as the Gemara said, that's when there's no Shabbat Tovah. So in a scenario where I did not ask permission from the people, the halacha is that I can't sell it without their permission. I'm over here, we're not selling it. I'm just I'm destroying it, but destroying it for the sake of rebuilding another one. So the halacha is, no, we're worried about the fact, seemingly, that maybe you're not going to do it. Here's my question. Ready for this? Why are you allowed to do renovations on a synagogue? Forget destroying it. The time that you're doing renovations, people can't pray there. Maybe you'll start a renovation project and never finish it.
You can still pray there if it stops.
But again, maybe you won't finish the renovation, and it'll be a building site forever.
Okay, now we're going back. Maybe is it?
You see, is it about demolition?
Is it about the kedusha?
Is it about the kedusha? Is it about the money?
Is it about that specific thing that is the synagogue?
See, at least in the bricks of the synagogue, I could argue that has nothing to do with the Mishnah. When it's the Mishnah, I'm selling the synagogue, I'm have money. That money is not the synagogue. So maybe that money can only be used, maybe I could say that money could be used for something else. But here, the bricks of the synagogue itself, maybe that has more of a holiness because that's the physical building of the Beit Knesset itself. And therefore, this law would apply, because remember, what did Rav Ashi tell Ravina? He said, go buy the mound from the Shivat Tovah. How come they didn't tell Rami Bar Abba, go buy the building of the synagogue from the Shivat Tovah? Maybe that law only applies to the money of a synagogue, not to the actual physical building of the synagogue itself. And that's why they didn't give him that option, like Rav Ashi gave to Ravina. You with me?
How could the kedusha translate to the money?
I lost it.
We started by saying that if this is holy, what does the money that I was paid for have to do with this holiness?
Right.
So therefore, when I have Shivat Tovah in front of the people, I have everyone agreeing, so I know what everyone would say. The money itself is not holy, so therefore that money could be used for anything else.
That money's fungible.
Fungible, okay.
Right.
Now, therefore, when Ravina came to Rav Ashi and said, I want to plant on this mound, can I plant on this mound? What was his answer to him?
No.
Go get the 7 committee members in front of the people, buy the land, and you can do whatever you want. Rami Bar Abba now wants to build a Beit Knesset using the old Beit Knesset. He comes to the rabbis, and what do they say? Mabisi, you're not allowed to do it. How come they don't tell him, gather the community members in front of the people? I'm saying maybe the reason why they didn't give him that answer is because that idea only worked on the money. Because as we said, the Kedusha doesn't go to the money. But the building itself, which was actually used for Kedusha, maybe you can't get away from the Kedusha of that building.
If you sell it, you're getting away from the kedusha.
Excellent.
Maybe he has to.
Wait. You hear the question he's asking? So we're locked here in a little bit of a two-step. Because if that's the reason why you couldn't do it by the building, then how do you ever sell it, even if you're going up?
Maybe you can never sell it.
Maybe the answer is that it does have Kedusha. But if there's a net positive of Kiddusha, which is higher than that Kiddusha, it's not a disgrace to the Kiddusha of the building itself, because I'm walking away with something bigger, something better, something holier. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
In a scenario where I'm not going from this to something holier, there's a space in between where I'm worried it might not transfer, which is what they're worried about over here.
But there may always be a space in between. Yeah. Even if you're selling it and you get the money, you're going to do something better.
There's an obligation. The obligation sits on the Shiva Tovei Ha'ir.
Still space.
This money cannot be spent except for something else.
But there's still time in between.
Sorry?
But there's still time in between.
That's not the question. You guys are not thinking
No,
right.
I understand.
You guys are not thinking right.
There's also something missing from this fact pattern.
Yes. Tell me.
Allowed to build it first?
Here it's a physical impossibility because he was using the beams from the other one for this one. Hold on. You guys are missing one point. Because I tricked you.
Can I say something?
Yes, hit me.
It says Rami Bar Ava was building a synagogue.
Yeah.
Didn't say all the townspeople agreed to it.
Okay, so?
Maybe if the townspeople agreed to it, the rabbis would have voted, okay, you could take the bricks and the stuff and the beams.
So my question is that last time when Ravina came and said Mutar Asur, what did he say? He didn't engage Mutar Asur. He said, get the approval, then it's Mutar. How come they didn't give him the same answer?
Why?
The answer might be because the difference in the physical shul and in the money of the shul. You guys are missing the one point here. Not the scenario where you sold the shul and you're using the money for something else. But the flip side was when everyone agreed, then the money could be used for beer. So what happened to the bricks of the shul when it wasn't transferred up?
That's what I said. Because if you're allowing the sale with everyone's approval to sell it, then you're losing everything.
Yeah, so that's the point of contention. So we're stuck over here a little bit in between these two places. How do we think about this?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You see, on the one hand, we're pointing out that maybe the building itself is not like the selling of the building, and that's why they didn't give him the answer. On the other hand, if you then apply it back in the Mishnah, when everyone agrees, and you get nothing for the synagogue being sold to now as a LA Fitness, okay?
Because not everybody agrees.
Sorry?
Because not everybody agrees.
No, but in
Not everybody agrees on what?
Everybody agrees to sell the thing, you go buy beer.
Okay, so now let's
Rami
say,
Bar Ava wants to build something, but not everybody agrees.
my question,
In the case
but in the case if they would.
In the case that everyone agrees, you lose the money's not. You could go
But
do whatever.
the rabbis
and
don't tell you the facts underlying him coming to them.
But in the piece before the Gemara did exactly that.
But they don't tell you what happens now.
Again, I'm just looking for uniformity. In the piece before, Ravina says, Mutar Asur, what does he say? Get the approval. This time he doesn't say get the approval.
So there's something fundamentally different.
One would imagine that that's the diuk over here you're supposed to make. The problem is, then the flip side on the Mishnah, you have the same question. Because they're actually selling the shul to LA Fitness, and they got nothing for it. And the only thing that you needed was the fact that the people agreed to do so.
The major distinction between the two is one is about money and one is about a building, right?
No. Because in the scenario where they all agree, there is no money.
The money could be used for anything.
Money can be used
And
for
the building
beer.
Could be used for anything.
But it
You're
is
losing-
money.
you're losing
So the money goes to beer, and the building goes to LA Fitness, and you have nothing. And now you have nothing, you see that the building itself is also not inherently
So what's
holy.
What's the big difference between the two scenarios?
That's what we're left with that question.
Could it be that
But Rabbi, 1 second. Rav Ashi said you have to check line for the rubble.
Yes.
Okay? So there's some saying
Rav Ashi said,
you have to pay to Ravina. You have to pay for that.
the point is not the check line part. The point is the check people part. In other words, if they agree, then that removes the Kiddusha. So then you can do whatever you
You
want.
have to buy it.
Yes, you have to buy it. But the point is not the buying. Like as an example, if the city decided they wanted to give it to them for free, they could have done that. The point is just that they all have to agree. The Shiva Tovei Ha'ir can't do it on their behalf because, as we said earlier, without their permission, I don't know if you would agree, Mr. Stakeholder.
So now all the people agree that you can take the bricks and the beams and build a new synagogue.
So then that should be mutar. And the Gemara does not suggest it. So the difference was that over here, there's actually, and by the way, these two cases are not the same.
Only one synagogue in the town.
Wait, why are these two cases not the same?
Say that either.
Why are these two cases not the same?
You don't need consensus.
No. Give me the difference between these two cases. What's the case of Ravina?
There was a synagogue already in existence.
We don't know that. What's the case of Ravina? Ravina comes and says, I have a what?
A heap of rubble.
There's nothing there.
Destroyed.
So Ravina's case, he's asking, I don't even have the building.
And they still say no.
I just have the mound. And the mound requires permission.
So it's the consensus of the people.
And the consent, yes, the people. What I'm saying is, on what is the consensus? I asked if maybe this case is different because the physical synagogue is here. So this is the place they prayed in. These are the bricks that soaked up all those prayers and all those words of Torah. Let's say, could you imagine some guy came in here and started spray painting the walls of the shul? You chop his head off. Why? Because it's not just a piece of wood. This is the synagogue. Now I tell you, you know what? Okay, I'm going to take that wood. I'm going to go surfing with it. So in Ravina's case, there was no synagogue. And still he required consensus from the people to take the Kiddusha out of the earth that it was on. Not even, there wasn't anything there.
He just says no.
No, in the first case, he says, go get consensus. Which means without consensus, it was a problem even on the earth.
We value books. We value everything.
We value everything, yes?
So there's got to be some nexus to that.
So my point is just that it is easier to understand. Let's look at the layers. The highest layer that you would assume is Kiddusha is the bricks, the wood. That is the closest to Kiddusha. That would require the highest level. The next level down is the earth. Because at least there's something tangible to this being the place. The last level is the money of the thing. You see?
Yeah.
So the question is, at what stage do we say that Kiddusha is locked into that thing? So with the first Gemara the Gemara is talking about selling the building and using the money.
So you're going from least to the most.
We're going from least to the most. Second, we talk about a case where, and maybe that's why they couldn't offer consensus. Again, that's my point. Because over here we're talking about the actual building itself. The problem I'm asking is we then have to loop back round to go to the least case because Rava threw a monkey wrench in by saying that that's only relevant when the people don't agree. But if the people agree, you could sell the building, use it for whatever you want. Remember there, I'm now not learning about the money of the building that I could spend on whatever I want. That we understand has no Kiddusha. But the building is now in LA Fitness.
But shouldn't the land be more important than the building?
I was in a city called Poznan in Poland. It's a place where Rabbi Akiva Eger actually lived and was the rabbi. There was a big synagogue that was turned, I believe, by the Nazis into like a gym. And they put in the synagogue, they put a swimming pool. So it became like a big swimming pool inside the synagogue. So we were saying, we're calling it the Brecha Knesset.
What's brecha?
Brecha is a pool.
Oh.
We were coming up with clever ways of combining the idea of a swimming pool and a
Pray while you're in the mikveh.
Sorry? So what was the Brecha Knesset? The other one was the... I forgot the other one. There was another pun on. But that's an example of, you look at this Beit Knesset and it's a tragedy that this has now become something which is not at all holy. The building is intact. How does them agreeing, how does that remove it? So, Bezrat Hashem,
there was definitely no agreement.
No, they're for
Right,
sure
so
not.
I'm saying, so it should still be...
No, what I'm saying is that the feeling of revulsion that we felt when we walked into there,
It's almost like
isn't that this?
Build the Beit Knesset, there's no going back, right? That's sort of the idea.
One would imagine. But then we have Rava coming in over here and telling us, no, it just depends on the consensus of the people. So there's no holiness, so then what's going on in the Gemara? There is holiness, what's going on in the Mishnah? So hopefully, Be'ezrat Hashem, as we go through the next piece of the Gemara, we will try and understand the parameters of exactly what it means. Yes, but that's the point. That we're supposed to kind of